Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld again, and today we're going to take another look at the history of FPS games. And in the last episode, we checked out one of the first Doom clones, Heretic, and so today we're going to check out another one, Star Wars Dark Forces. In a nutshell, Dark Forces was the very first Star Wars FPS game ever made, which came out way back in 1995. And still to this day, it's considered to be one of the best Star Wars games ever made, and it's safe to say it paved the way for future games like Battlefront. The main reason Dark Forces deserves a spot in this series though, is because unlike Heretic, the dev team LucasArts had nothing to do with id Software. And in fact, LucasArts were probably best known for their space sims at the time, which meant that this game was made with a completely new approach. So why did they choose to get into making FPS games? Well, the initial idea came from fans who had made their own Star Wars mods for Doom. And so much like the story of so many popular FPS franchises goes, these mods were enough to convince the devs that there was a market there already ready to go. Now, because LucasArts was starting from scratch, they decided the best approach would be to design the brand new Jedi engine from the ground up. And compared to the Doom engine, it actually had a lot of improvements, like for example, support for animated textures and the ability to render 3D objects. The game also included the LucasArts iMuse system, which was a feature that dynamically synced music with what was happening on the screen. And not just that, speaking of audio, the game also had quite a lot of other features we now take for granted, like true audio speech and stereo sound effects. The biggest difference between Dark Forces and the previous games though was the attention given to the storyline. And unlike in Doom, where you play as a nameless space marine, in this game you play as a former Imperial stormtrooper named Kyle Katarn. Without giving away any spoilers, basically in the first mission, you steal the Death Star plans, which in other words links the game with the official canon. And not just that, the game also further expanded the Star Wars universe with new weapons, as well as the Dark Troopers, which would return in games like Battlefront. Now, I should point out that this attention to the plot wasn't just window dressing, because it actually fundamentally changed the way you play the missions. And what I mean by this is basically instead of just having to find keys that lead to an exit, you have to complete specific objectives which you get in a briefing at the start of each mission. Most of the objectives are pretty basic, like finding an item or a person and then returning to your ship. But in saying that, as simple as this concept is, it does make you feel like you're actually trying to achieve something, and this does have a way of making each mission feel more unique. It's not just the mission design that helps with the immersion though, even improvements in the player movement made a big difference. And that's because Dark Forces was actually one of the first FPS games to allow the player to jump, crouch, and look up and down. With that being said though, I should make the point that the vanilla version of the game doesn't actually have true mouse look like what we know today, but with that being said, everything was in there to make it work, and as you can see in this video, there are third-party emulators that are able to add in this feature. But anyway, to finish up, although Dark Forces was a fairly big hit at the time, its success would only be short-lived. And that's because by 1995, Doom clones were already starting to show their age, and barely a year later, full 3D graphics would begin to take over. Not just that though, Dark Forces basically released smack bang into the middle of the Doom clone era, and as good as it was always going to have stiff competition. And that meant with innovation in the genre moving so fast, it was only a matter of time until something bigger and better eventually stole the spotlight. Bearing that in mind though, there is no denying that for a short time it was pretty groundbreaking, even forgetting the fact that it's a Star Wars game. And with that being said, I think most people would probably also agree its sequel, Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, is probably just as good or maybe even better. So in other words, if you're a fan of Star Wars or just FPS games in general, then you really owe it to yourself to try this one out. And to be honest, there's really no excuse not to either, because you can pick it up very easily these days on Steam, GOG, or on most abandonware sites. But anyway, guys, that just about brings you up to date with Dark Forces. So let me know what you think of this game in the comment section below. And as always, if you like what you see, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out the links in the description below if you want to see any more of my videos, or if you want to support my channel on Patreon. And until next time, see you later, and have a good one.